So my name is Amanda Ebert, and I'm a graduate student here in the Faculty of Kinesiology, Sport and Rec. Now I'm really pleased to be introducing our panel to you today, where we'll be talking about some of the inclusive sport and recreation opportunities going on around Alberta beyond the bounds of Parasport. So we'll start with Johnny Byrne. Johnny is from Special Olympics Alberta, and he's been in numerous positions over the years and is now a passionate champion as their CEO. Johnny has extensive experience in program development and major games, having served Team Canada in numerous roles at the Special Olympics since 2003. So, turned over to Johnny.
Awesome. Thanks so much for this opportunity. I know it was when Tim said, come on, you got to talk about the Special Olympics. I'm like, great. All right, 170 countries, 4 million athletes, 50 years of history. He's like, you got 15 minutes. I'm like, all right, no problem. Challenge accepted. I can handle this. It's a great opportunity for me. We're just talking about the challenges that our sector faces. And the thing is, right now, we all do it together in our silos, and we tackle it and we fight. And the realities we all face is that, for me, it's not the 3,000 athletes we serve, it's the 52,000 that we don't. And the thing is, it's when you hear people up talking here, it's the barriers that we face. And finding ways to take down the barriers between each of us is a huge way that we can tackle these challenges together. I know just from a Special Olympics standpoint, and what I'm going to do is just go through a bit of our 50 years, sort of where we've been, where we are right now, and for me, what's most important, it's like, okay, what are those next steps, and what can the future hold for us? Because one of the things that Special Olympics, it's the double-edged sword of our name. It is one of the most highly recognized brands in the world, but it's one of the least understood. Because the first question we'll often have is like, so you're in Pyeongchang this year. It's like, no, it's the Paralympics, sorry, but it's like, yeah, no, we're friendly, we get along, some of our athletes compete in both, but we're different. So opportunities like today is a chance, hey, this is what Special Olympics is, and this is who we are, and these are the partnerships that we're excited about, because we know that's our future. It's to reach more, to have more opportunities, it's the partnerships we can create with other organizations, because that's where our great opportunity lies. And it's, for a lot of this, it's when you're willing to make that leap and take that leap of faith, and understanding that, yeah, you're going to lose some control and you're going to lose some of the things that you feel are critical to you, but at the end of the day, when we move to that 52,000 that we're not serving, that's the real key for us. So, yeah, Special Olympics has been around 50 years. It's this July, it'll mark 50 years since the first Special Olympic Games that were held at Soldiers Field in Chicago. One of the things that's, for those that don't know, is sort of the science behind Special Olympics, and one of the key members is Dr. Frank Hayden, who's a researcher out of Toronto. He just asked that question sort of way back when, because all of us in all of our disability groups deal with the perceptions that are placed on us. And he sort of asked the question, it was the assumption that it's like, okay, people with intellectual disabilities are overweight. That's just part of who they are. And he just sort of asked the question, it's like, well, you're making them sit in the corner and not do physical activity. Could that have something to do with it? And believe it or not, he did some research, and yes, that is the reason. It's like, if you're not physically active and you can't get out there, then there's a good chance you're going to not have the benefits of sport and physical activity. So he did that research, which right now to us, it's pretty basic. But back in the 60s, when the majority of people with intellectual disabilities, if they didn't have a supportive family or were in an institution, it was not so basic. And what that led to was sort of his research just getting the attention of the Shrivers. So Eunice Kennedy Shriver was the founder of Special Olympics, and she started a connection with Dr. Hayden, and he started to say, it's like, I think we can do something here. We think we can do something more. And then at that point, it was like, let's hold an event. Very simple. It's like, let's get people together. And that's when the first Special Olympics Games were held. And that's when the athlete's oath at that time, which is, and still is, let me win, but if I cannot win, let me be brave in the attempt, was coined. And from that point in 1968, when you had two countries, which was the US and Canada, took part in those games, to being an event to being a global movement. So right now, as you said, there's over 170 countries, over 4 million athletes around the world that actively participate in Special Olympics. And that's one of those great benefits of being involved in Special Olympics is that global movement. And at that time, one of the founding principles was this movement and this sport organization is going to be for people of all ability levels. And that was that founding principle which still carries through today at all levels of our organization, whether it's at the a local level or whether it's going to be all the way up to the World Games. So that's where we've came from. And it's important to know for me in that organization, for people to understand sort of what Special Olympics is and what those founding principles are. And now as we move forward, and as we look at what is Special Olympics today. So Special Olympics, we're multi-sport. We've got 18 different official sports that we utilize, but we also have many different sporting opportunities, recreational opportunities that we try, because our main goal is, okay, how do we get more people with intellectual disabilities active? One of the things that we have noted is that people with disabilities have a lot more health challenges than those without. So it's not, okay, how do we get more people to World Games? Like that's going to be like something that comes, but it's like, how do we get more people with intellectual disabilities active? And in Alberta, Special Olympics, we service athletes in over 160 communities. We have over 3,400 athletes. And we'll, depending on that, whether you're rural, whether you're metro, wherever that looks like, it'll have different types of programs that we offer. And one of the things that for Special Olympics is the first question that you get is sort of when are they? Because the name Olympics, people assume they're an event. As with a lot of sports, where we have our primary impact is going to be at that grassroots level. So it's going to be in those 160 communities that we service. And that's something we're very proud of. That being said, we still have a competitive stream. So we'll have local, regional, provincial, national, and world level competitions that athletes with intellectual disabilities take part in under Special Olympics. And one of the things about our programs as well is we'll service the ages of 2 up to 80. And if you go to any of our programs, whether it's a bowling night in one of our programs, whether it's track and field, whether it's swimming, you will see a wide range of ages. Obviously, we have active start and fundamentals programs that we offer for our younger athletes, and then we also have school programs, which is one of our most exciting areas right now. One thing about Special Olympics and part of our movement, and this is one of the barriers that came up earlier, is financially. So we don't charge members a membership fee. So that's not part of our fee structure or part of our organization structure. And so that is one of those kind of key pieces for us, because for the majority of people with intellectual disabilities, they're either on living with families or living in supportive environments, and so cash flow is not something that is large to them. And we're very much a low-cost, cost recovery model, and then the other key piece is inclusion. So, and that's for all ability levels, as we talked about. So that, like, when you look at our programs, you need to have an intellectual disability, but at the same time, at the community level, we're not like, okay, well, where's your IQ test or where's your testing? Because those are things that cost a lot of money and are a barrier. And it's one of the things we find out, it's either through referral or whether an athlete gets in there, we figure out very soon, it's like, okay, are they a fit for our organization? In today's, one of the things that I guess that I find exciting about where we're at today are the partnerships we have with PSOs and NSOs. And I know whether it's figure skating or swimming or track or cross-country ski, we've got some amazing partnerships with them. And once again, that's how we start to expand our reach. And for us, what we tend to bring to the table is, hey, here's some great tools and resources if you're working with people with intellectual disabilities. Because I find with any of the experts and individuals we work with, one of those great challenges is being adaptive to a person with an intellectual disability, because it's that whole piece of, okay, well, how do I go up and talk to them? It's like, do I understand? Because it's not, okay, we're going to need to sign, or it's not, okay, we need to have this person's in a wheelchair, so we've got to look at this. It's that base to base. It's like, okay, how do I talk to someone that has an intellectual disability? And if you ever come to any of our programs, that happens very easily, because they will just come up and talk to you, and you're not going to have a chance to think about it. But there is that huge barrier, And once again, it's a perception and a fear. But one of the things that we like to do with our PSOs and groups is, yeah, just get in there and talk and offer that training. But what we need from our sports is, like, we're not going to create coach training and development opportunities in 18 official sports. Like, that's why sport organizations exist. We go to them for the expertise. We go to them for training. And for a lot of them, depending on our sports, is that we'll try and partner with them to ensure for some of our athletes there are competitions available. I know in speed skating, we primarily use their competition network for our competitions because we don't have enough athletes to offer our own standalone competitions. And quite honestly, the more opportunities we can to be part of other competitions and have divisions for people with intellectual disability, it helps with awareness, it helps things all around. So we have some great opportunities. And this also too where things get a bit confusing because it's like when I say it's like, okay, we're not part of Paralympics, but there is an S14 class and there are people with intellectual disabilities that are in Paralympics, and you will have some people that are in Special Olympics and Paralympics. The key thing for me is there's no Special Olympic tattoo that goes on a person with an intellectual disability saying that, no, you're only Special Olympics. It's like they'll flow through, they'll go wherever. It's like the key thing in our system, we just got to find out what's the fit for the athlete. It's not, we need that registration number, we need that number under our, so that we can say, okay, we've got 3,401 athletes now. It's like, okay, what's the best for the athlete? Because that's going to retain that athlete in our system. And whether they flow through and become a para-athlete under swimming and then come back later on in life, like I said, our athletes are there from age 2 to 80, and at certain points in their life, it's a great fit for them, and other points it may not be. But the key thing is that we're not putting up that barrier for them. Within Special Olympics as well, when we look at our evolution of sport, is that at some points, and I'm sure you've heard, and even within our sports system, it's like Special Olympics is used as like oh, that's nice. It's like, oh, they're the Special Olympics. I've seen plenty of things where it's like, it's almost used as a derogatory term. It's like, no, we're serious about sport. We're not Special Olympics. And that's the reality we face. And it's like, yeah, if you come up to some of our competitions, you meet some of our athletes, like it's a different type of environment. But once again, we're on a spectrum. We're going to have many athletes, and of all of our different ability levels that are either going to be in a competitive mind frame or going to be in a recreational mindset. But the key thing is that it's an evolution. I remember David earlier today was referencing sort of the early years in Paralympics and sort of when it was nice to be there. And for us, we were like that as well. As when I was starting out in 1999, like that was our first national team program where it said, no, you just don't get a uniform and show up and go to World Games. It's like, yeah, no, we need a training program. We need this. And now 20 years later, we've got performance programs around province, like for us right now, like partnering with our ASDCs to develop programs for our athletes and coaches. Like those are all real opportunities that we have and something that's very exciting. And when I look at sort of where we're going, which is for me is the most exciting, it's some of those opportunities that we have right now. And for me, it's being part of days like today. It's like, what partnerships can we create? And because our athletes are athletes, and there's going to be opportunities in many different organizations to partner. And especially when we're talking about rural community programs, it's to segment, it's like, no, this is where our people with intellectual disabilities are going to be, and this is where our wheelchair athletes are going to be, and this is where our blind athletes are going to be. It does not make a lot of sense, but at the same time, like, there's barriers that will go up there that says, no, we can't go in the same thing. Whether that's funding or whether that's perception, those are barriers that we deal with. And for me, like, I look at that as exciting because it's a huge opportunity for us out there. And it is really challenging, though, because it's really easy to talk about that here. But when you get back to your day-to-day job and it's like, I've got just enough funding to get by, or I don't have enough time to deliver the programs I want, to say, hey, let's talk partnerships and new things, it's a lot harder. So it's a system thing, and it's something we need to tackle together, and we've got to push for more resources, and we've got to push for this. And it's a much stronger voice when we do it together than when we do it separately, because this is about athletes, whether it's athletes with disabilities, without, and I think that's the thing we need to focus on. And I'll leave with two things that I'm excited about moving forward from a Special Olympics perspective, just to give you sort of some ideas. Obviously, partnerships is a key thing, and for us, just being seen as part of the sport community is a key thing. The other side of Special Olympics is we're getting a lot more into health, because that's a huge barrier that our population faces. And being part of a global movement, we have access to Special Olympics Healthy Athletes programs, which gets down even to physician training and athlete screening and things like that. And our athletes have been going to athlete screenings at World Games and things like that for many years, and you will not be surprised to hear that people with intellectual disabilities don't get great care in the health system. When you look at the screenings and you compare some of the challenges that they have compared to third world countries, people in the US and those, it's like, yeah, we're right along the same line. So that is something that we're going to be tackling a lot more as Special Olympics and evolving those programs in Alberta. And actually for many groups, so if you look at Africa, Special Olympics is first seen as a health organization, not a sport organization. And it's actually in some groups, categorized as the largest health organization for people with intellectual disabilities in the world. The one program that I'm most excited about and we've seen the most growth with, that I'll leave you with, is our Special Olympics Unified Sport Program. This is our partnership with Alberta Schools Athletic Association. This is a global program that we've brought to Alberta in the past few years, and we were one of the first provinces in Alberta in Canada to launch this. And Unified Sports is people with and without disabilities that play sport together. And we launched it a couple of years ago, and a picture I have up here is, top picture was our first year. We did a bocce competition. We had 2 schools and a handful of athletes. The picture directly below that is year 2. That was the exact same bocce competition. We had 6 schools and probably 10 times as many athletes. And when you talk about inclusion, there's no simpler way to have a high school student with and without a disability figure things out than say, just go play. Sport figures things out when it comes to that. And if you're really interested in checking out Unified Sports and seeing what it's all about, this coming Tuesday, we're going to be at the Saville Center from 9:30 to 3:30. The first year we did this program in Edmonton, we had 3 schools and 50 athletes and partners, so people with and without disabilities. This Tuesday, we're going to have 15 schools and 230 athletes with and without disabilities that are playing sport together. This is something that's, the way we to see it is sort of changing the next generation, and something we're extremely excited about, and is teaching acceptance and understanding of people with intellectual disabilities. So a very exciting future for us, and it's, I think for me, it's looking to work with everybody to bring sport to more, and sort of this is our global vision, which is sport will open our hearts and minds towards people with intellectual disabilities and create inclusive communities all over the world. So, and that is definitely sort of, we want to be part of that, and we want to be part of that with the sport community here. And thank you for the opportunity to have this discussion.
Great, thanks, Johnny. We'll hear next from Amarina from Alberta Deaf Sports Association, and I'll actually let her introduce herself.
Firstly, I'd like to thank you for allowing me to be part of this today. When I was invited here, I was very excited. I'm thrilled to be here to share with you what Alberta Deaf Sports Association is all about. I'm the admin assistant, and I work for ADSA. I've been included in many different, I do a lot with ADSA in the office. I do admin work, I respond to emails, lots of paperwork within the office. And now I lost where I was in my speech. One key thing that we want to focus on in ADSA is long-term athlete development. I'm not sure if you're all familiar with LTAD. So it's starting with youth and recreational sport, and then continuing with that sport for life. So we've been slowly setting that up through ADSA, and I'm also involved in the after-school programs at the Alberta School for the Deaf. So we have young athletes and trying to encourage them to be involved in sport. We also have nightly events as well. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we have open gym. Individuals come to play pickleball, volleyball, whatever sport they're interested in. Pickleball is relatively new and it's quite popular at the moment, so there's a lot of people that come to use the gym to play pickleball. With the ISR Summit, this really fits in with our vision of collaboration and partnership and supporting each other in supporting deaf and hard of hearing athletes to be successful in sport. Our mission is to improve and to grow, enhance, and influence future growth for our deaf and hard of hearing athletes in Alberta. We want to emphasize quality sport. We don't want deaf and hard of hearing athletes just playing. We want to see them on the podium one day. We want them to have goals and hopes and dreams and to be able to advance in sport. And that's why I'm here today. I'm here to advocate for those increased opportunities for quality sport for deaf and hard of hearing individuals. Opportunities for deaf and hard of hearing individuals to reach the podium stage, according to the LTAD model, is limited. We don't qualify for the Paralympics, which makes it difficult for us. The Paralympics includes 10 different impairments, and hearing loss is not one of them. Thank you. So these are the regulations for Paralympics, and hearing loss is not there. I just wanted to show you what is mandated by the Paralympics. I'm not going to go through each category, but you do see that it doesn't have hearing impairments there. There is visual impairment, but nothing for individuals who are deaf or hard of hearing. In Alberta and across Canada, hearing loss is considered a disability, but at the same time, we're excluded from the Paralympics. So, as a result, deaf and hard of hearing communities have had to fight and to build that path to make their way to the podium. We rely heavily on our establishing national and international sport competitions for deaf and hard of hearing individuals. One thing I'd like to emphasize about that is that it does depend on the hearing loss and how many decibels of hearing an individual, a deaf or hard of hearing individual, does have. We have set up the Deaf Olympics in Canada, and this is equivalent to us in athletic excellence to Paralympics, as well as Olympics and moving up to international level of sport. Thank you. I wanted to show this to show why I feel it's important. We have the Olympics for non-deaf individuals, and we have the Paralympics for individuals with disabilities, and the Deaf Olympics for those of us who are deaf and hard of hearing. You can see by what I have on the screen that there's a lot of sponsorship, there's a lot of media, there's many large companies that do offer support for the Olympics. And this is done worldwide. It's shown on TV for everyone to be a part of. Everyone's watching the Olympics, everyone's following the schedule and watching their sports. We also see this with the Paralympics. There is a large corporate sponsorship that is provided to the Paralympics. You can see some of the examples up here. Petrocan, Hudson's Bay, Canadian Tire. And the media coverage is equivalent to the Olympics. However, with the Deaf Olympics, where's our sponsorship? Where's our media coverage? We have international committees that are trying to put this work together without the sponsorship and support. We don't see Toyota offering us sponsorship or any of those other big corporate companies. We have nothing that the other Olympics are seeing. Our media coverage is extremely limited, if there's any. So at ADSA, our organization feels that we need to fight for change. We need to show that deaf athletes are equivalent to other Paralympic and Olympic athletes, and our athletic excellence is on par. Those athletes deserve the praise and the recognition of their hard work, and they deserve to make it to the podium. And at ADSA, that's something that's very important to us, and I'm hoping to make that important to all of you as well. And just to emphasize again, with hearing loss, an individual has to have 55 decibels or less hearing to be able to make it into the Pan Am Deaf Games. If you have 55 decibels or worse in one ear and not the other, you are not considered, period. So you can't be a part of our international Olympics, which also isn't fair. So that person becomes in limbo. They can't qualify for the non-deaf Olympics, and they don't qualify for the deaf Olympics. So that's another huge barrier that we see in the deaf community. I think if we had bigger sponsorship, if we had more community partnership, and we had people opening their minds to understand that deaf people are part of this as well, and to be excluded is not fair. So I'm hoping today, as I'm here presenting, I'm opening minds and opening eyes to show the potential that deaf athletes do have. The opportunities for deaf athletes in Alberta and Canada. For example, we have our Deaf Games coming up in 2020, and Alberta Deaf Sports Association is actually hosting that in May of 2020 here in Edmonton. This is very exciting for us to be a part of that. The many different sports that we will have, we're hoping to have swimming, pickleball, hockey, curling, bowling, volleyball, basketball, many different sports. I look forward to the possibility that this summit is providing us at ADSA and the potential partnerships that could come of this with the different PSOs and maybe corporate sponsorship and even government support if possible. One of the biggest struggles we have is financial. And I know that everyone else is in the same boat. Everyone has financial issues. But if we could see more corporate sponsorship, if we could be more involved in the media and get our name out there and get more involvement from other organizations as well, that would help our cause. With the Paralympics, we have applied to bring athletes to be involved with the Paralympics. We've been denied. So, because we don't meet their criteria. So we have been trying to find our own sponsorship to be able to provide these opportunities for our athletes, and we seem to be met at roadblocks at every corner. If anyone is inspired by my presentation today and wants to help us make this change, please feel free to contact me. I have a handful of business cards I would be happy to hand out. We're looking for partnerships, or we're looking for support and sponsorship, collaborations and contributions from everyone. Friends, family, places that you work, the Canada Deaf Games would appreciate your support. We want to include you in our Canada Deaf Games in 2020, and we hope you want to be included as well. The sky is the limit. Thank you.
Wonderful. Lots of exciting things there for sure, Amarina. Next we'll hear from Dean Kozak. He introduced himself to me as the boring government guy. But technically he's the Senior Advisor for Physical Activity for the Tourism and Recreation Division in the Ministry of Culture and Tourism, Government of Alberta. That does sound like a government title. But I'll let you tell us a little bit more about what you're here about today too. Thanks, Dean.
Thanks, Amanda. Hopefully I can live up to the billing of being boring. I know it's post-lunchtime and they put me here now, so we'll talk policy. No, probably not all policy, but in terms of creating opportunities for an inclusive environment, obviously that's what all governments, regardless of which party is leading, that's what the mandate of government is to create opportunities in whichever ministry for all Albertans. So one of the ways we can do that in our ministry and in other ministries is through funding, obviously. So I'm sure there'll be funding questions, so we can maybe form a line outside the door there afterwards. But we have operational funding that we provide to provincial nonprofit active living and recreation groups. So we have approximately 40 groups that we provide annual operational funds to. So while government can't necessarily create opportunities in sport and recreation directly, we, through our operational funding, strive to have our provincial nonprofit groups do so. We have recently been able to move towards a new funding model that hopefully will be able to actually measure, track, and assess if organizations are doing that In the past, we really haven't been able to a great degree. So hopefully moving forward, that's something we'll be able to track, because that is very, it's pervasive throughout government now to be inclusive of all Albertans. So the operational funding is one means of that. Another means is through our annual project grants, of which we, in our branch specifically, we have 2 grants. One we like to term the macro grant, and one is the micro grant. The macro grant is offered annually for provincial nonprofit organizations, again, to at a larger level than the micro grant. And the micro grant is also offered every year, but it has a theme. So this is where we hope through the micro grant we can target maybe some of the other populations in Alberta or specific projects. 2 years ago, the theme was around play. Last year it was around girls and women. This year we don't have a theme yet, but we'll be working on that for the fall. So outside of the funding piece, now this year where we get into policy. And believe it or not, I don't have it memorized, so I have to refer to my notes a bit. We have the Active Alberta policy that some or many of you may be aware of. That policy has been around since 2011, and there's 6 outcomes in that policy, 3 of which really, I would say, probably apply particularly to what we're here today about it in terms of inclusion. Active Albertans is one outcome that obviously we want the policy to help guide what government does for all Albertans. Active communities in terms of what government does for communities in the sense of a municipality, but even communities in the sense of cultural, geographical, whatever it may be. And then active engagement. So how are we engaging with all Albertans across the province when we try to implement this policy? Obviously the policy is just that. It's not a regulation, it's not a guideline. We can't force people to do things with it, but we hope it's a guiding principle. It is a guiding principle for government, but hopefully organizations in the sector look to it as well as a guiding principle. Maybe 2 years ago, the Framework for Recreation in Canada, and of course in government we like our acronyms, and this one I think is the best yet. So Framework for Recreation in Canada. You can figure that one out. One of the better acronyms, but it has a number of goals. One of them is inclusion and access. So obviously that applies directly to inclusion of all Albertans, but this is a federal, provincial, territorial framework that really guides, is a guiding document for the recreation sector. And in that inclusion goal, it really does look at anything from ethnicity, gender, cultural, through to people with disabilities. And it's a good thing that Danielle and Tim scheduled it for today, because I wouldn't have been able to talk about this last policy. The Common Vision was actually signed off on yesterday about this time by federal, provincial, territorial ministers. So it was publicly released yesterday. It's a national physical activity and reduction of sedentary framework basically for federal and provincial territorial governments. So it has 5 guiding principles. The one principle that really applies, again, to today is the population approach. And it has 8 goals within that obviously include, again, much like the FRIC, it includes ethnicity, culture, gender, equitable, affordable, and accessible. I think one of the more unique goals in that, though, however, is that it has a principle around ensuring the inclusion of all underrepresented populations in the decision-making process. So I don't recall in any of the other policies where it really comes out with a strong principle around it, but it does in the Common Vision. So again, that one just came out yesterday. It's on the Public Health Agency of Canada website. When you're looking for some engaging reading, it's there. Those are the 3 main policies that also, again, the government can look towards to help ensure inclusion of all Albertans. A last more unique one that is not government, it was perhaps spurred by government a bit, but now it's off on its own and it's kind of its own little Bambi phase, is something called the Active Alberta Coalition. So this is an effort much akin to smoking cessation, seatbelts, those larger social movements. It's looking at getting all the individuals and organizations in the active living, active recreation, and sports sector together for a common vision, common mission, and common messaging. It has had stutter starts in the past, but now it's actually at a very formative stage to the point that we have an organization in the sector that's acting as a secretariat for staff to lead it, so it's not being led off the corner of the desk. It's at activealbertacoalition.ca. There's a landing page right now. You can go and sign up and receive e-news. There'll be more documentation put up there next week around it. Just on Wednesday, 20 plus organizations physically signed an intent document to work together. So again, it's got 5 or 6 strategies that we're working towards, and it's about including everybody in the active living, active recreation, and sports sector together so that we can have that common voice and perhaps move the social needle on getting more Albertans more active more often. And that would be it from my perspective.
Great, thanks, Dean. We have a few minutes left, so I can open the floor to questions. I think there'll be conversations between Amory and Dean later, for sure.
Dean finished with the funding stuff, so now everyone's just focused right there. It's like, that's where the money is, let's go talk to him.
Well, after I gave you some of my time.
I ran this whole thing just so I could ask this question at this moment. One of the things, the majority of Canadians with disabilities have multiple impairments. And so it's a question about how we think through providing sport and recreation opportunities for folks that who might be served by multiple organizations, and because of that, not served by any of them.
Well, I think from the government perspective, I've always found this a bit of a gap in that we fund sport, we fund recreation and active living, but if you have, for example, disability organizations, multi-disability organizations, they do both. Disability sport organizations are actually really good at the base recruitment, well, maybe not great at base recruitment, but good at recruitment, but also grassroots development. And it's important for those organizations to be able to develop athletes, but also have the recreation side of it. However, we don't punish them, but we make them say, okay, your sport or your recreation. So I think to your question about multi-disability, I think it probably lends in a bit there, in that I think a lot of multi-disability organizations would have to pick one horse and ride it, unfortunately, from a funding perspective.
So, and I would say from our organizations that we're set up for as a multidisability group, but the main eligibility criteria is intellectual disability, but we do have many other disabilities that are involved as long as they have an intellectual disability. And the way our programs, both from a training and a competitive structure is set up, so our divisioning criteria will segment people by ability anyway. So you could have multiple disabilities within, say, on a team or like in a division or race, but they're basically grouped by their ability, not by, okay, here's all of our, here's the specific disability group together. It's really, okay, are you within an X amount of percentage of each other when it comes to your ability to compete? So yeah, there's, we have a wide cross-section of disabilities.
And Amarina, anything to add to that?
Not really, no.
Any other questions? I have one, but I can wait and let the mic go around the room first. Okay, I have one for Amarina right now. I'm just wondering, beyond funding, what other
Oh boy.
what other opportunities beyond funding are you looking for, like collaborations with 2020 coming up?
Really, we have multi-sport involved in the Canada Deaf Games. We have many sports clubs that are working with Alberta Deaf Sports Association, curling, golf, darts, and pickleball. We used to have a bowling club as well, but that has since folded. The only thing is that we don't have coaches for any of these sports, professional coaches. So when it comes to training and advancement, we don't have coaches saying, this is what you need to work on and this is what needs improvement. So when it comes to the Deaf Games in 2020, national level competition, not having skilled coaches, that would be very helpful in partnerships and where others could provide support. For another example is partnering with Volleyball Alberta or other curling clubs within the city and working together, trying to find ways that we can work with referees or officials, other people that are really savvy at asking for money, sorry to bring up money again, and people who are experts in their areas, expert curlers, maybe offering us some advice or some training, maybe a 1-day or 2-day training, so our curlers or athletes could participate in something like that. There are so many different opportunities to help advance our athlete and to get us up to the national level, and that we don't have access to.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? We'll just take a break early. Okay. We'll have another coffee break. Our next session starts at 3:30. And thank you very much to our panel.